Hello, I'm Kai Rosga, and welcome to Version Up, one lawyer's journey to digitally transform his legal practice. Today, I have the true pleasure of having on the pod Benjamin Llinas, Matter Optimization Manager at Linklaters law firm. Ben is that unicorn in a law firm org structure that sits at the intersection of supporting lawyers, servicing clients, and deploying technology. His work is part art, part science, part technologist, part psychologist. We talk about innovation at law firms and how to do it successfully by remaining hyper-focused on the needs of the lawyers who will be using the tech. The conversation reinforced for me problem solving, not allegiance to any particular technology or solution, is at the core of a successful digital transformation. I learned a ton from the conversation, and I hope you pick up some useful points as well. Benjamin Llinas, welcome to Version Up. Thanks for joining.
Thank you for having me.
You are the first guest to be here in person, which is a nice experience. So thank you for doing that as well.
My pleasure.
Ben, I'm really excited to talk to you today. I would love to have you just introduce yourself to the audience and who you are and what you do.
Thank you. So before we get into this, I just want to say that everything I'm about to say is of my own opinion and not the company I work for. So everything is from what I've seen and heard and my years of experience in the industry, but not necessarily the views of where I work or our clients. So my name is Benjamin Llinas, and I'm currently the MO manager, which is the Matter Optimization Manager in the Americas for Linklaters. This means I manage the e-discovery team, the paralegal team, managing clerks. I assist with digital adoption and tech innovation. And I kind of just work with the attorneys to figure out how the matter should go in the most efficient way possible.
And what's your background? What got you to this position?
Well, I was an English major, so of course I fell into tech. I was working at the U.S. Attorney's Office when I was in college, and our CIO, Shapil Khan, actually, him and I really hit it off, and he saw something in me because I was doing their presentation work actually and their courtroom setups for them. So he saw I had a knack for tech, and I just understood it and I liked it. And so he kind of took me under his wing and brought me into his team. And at the same time, I luckily happened to be a perfect situation where e-discovery just started coming about. We're talking about concordance and things like that back in the day, major platforms before relativity came around. So I got my foot in the door by just being at the right place at the right time and understanding how databases were set up and how documents needed to be processed, metadata needed to be extracted from them. And then I went over to Cato Gordon and started working on their e-discovery team under Michael Sullivan, who was a fantastic leader at the time for me. Worked my way to Wilson Elser and then over to Linklaters, where I worked with Tim Faheli. I was very fortunate to work underneath him. He was a great mentor to me. And then I left to go to Allegory Law, which was a legal tech startup with Alma Say and Corey Barnes, who I stay in touch with to this day. And he currently works at Laterra. Great things over there. And then when I was working over there, Linklaters was working on a second request, and they asked me to come back and help manage the project, which I did, working with the antitrust team. Then they asked me to stay. And next thing I know, I was doing new discovery work for them again, and slowly been building a team around myself.
So we've had 2 episodes in a row now with antitrust related founders. I promise that's not today. My audience is probably sick of hearing about antitrust at this point. But what I'm really excited to explore today is you're like this perfect transition guest for me, because I've had a series of episodes now with vendors and founders and increasingly with lawyer founders, people who had experience practicing law, who had ideas for how to problem solve with technology and decided to go out and start up shop and develop a tool. And where I'd like to go next with the podcast is talking to some people who are practitioners that are developing things kind of rough and on the go. Something people have heard described as vibe coding. But you to me are like a bit of a transition between those two, because you are embedded with the lawyers, you're working with lawyers, practitioners day to day, but you yourself are now a practicing lawyer. So I'm really excited to talk today about how you'd go about supporting lawyers day to day with technology. But before we get into the weeds, I thought I'd get your perspective, big picture first on how are law firms just generally responding to all the developments that we're seeing in AI in the last couple of years? What kind of changes do you see?
Law firms, like everywhere else, are becoming heavy adopters of I think they're heavily adopting it more so than they would usual legal tech and in such a quick pace, just because that's where the world is going. Everything now has an AI plugin or AI component to it, regardless of what industry you're in right now. And it's affecting everybody's jobs. It's something that everyone's aware of and everyone's using now. Law firms are being pushed more so to use them because their clients are also using them. And there's also expectations to be using them in everything we're doing now. I mean, schoolwork is happening as well. My daughter is only 10. They talk about AI in their classroom. So, I mean, every capacity to every walk of life now is talking about it, which means that everyone has to be in some way using it. Law firms are heavily adopting it at this point.
So I heard a little bit of defense and a little bit of offense in that answer. Can you tell me what are the specific sort of drivers coming from the clients? What are the expectations? Is it effectiveness, efficiency, cost savings, all about the bottom line? What are clients asking for that have caused law firms to kind of wake up and realize, okay, this is a need that we need to address?
I think it's all the things that you mentioned, plus one additional one which is also just advice about it as well. But I mean, every client wants their lawyer to be as efficient as possible, right? I mean, they pay by the hour, but they also just want their information as fast as possible. So that means efficiency, right? Just as people were using Google or Westlaw before just do the searches, now they can use AI to assist them with those searches in the same capacity. So clients want things to be more efficient. More efficiency means cost savings, right? And that could be across the board for everybody in some way. So it's those two things. Plus, it's also just the education piece. I think clients are coming to firms also to understand how they can use it, the risks to them as well of them using it. They know law firms also are risk averse and they supply guidance on risk also. So they come to their attorneys or the firms that they're working with to get them guidance in a way of how to handle that, just like they would handle a contract or handle any other guidance.
Almost sounds like a advisory kind of role, consultant kind of role.
I think so in a certain capacity, because anytime something new is happening, the client is going to want to know what kind of risk aversion they should have and also how it could affect them. Maybe in a contract, if we're using AI, how is that going to upset something within a contract we sign with an individual? Or how do we have to implement AI into our contracts in the future? Attorneys are always in advisory capacity, right? This is just another way that they would be doing it.
Yeah. And the speed point really connects for me because in the years I did private practice, every time we had a partner presenting to the junior attorneys on how to service clients, one of the most common things we always heard in the list was speed. Yeah, how quickly you respond. And this is just a reality of working in a corporate law firm, supporting corporate clients. And there, you're trying to get quick answer, or at least you're trying to let the client know, hey, I'm on it, or I'm going to make some progress now and dive in deeper. So that's point taken. And how do you balance that speed against the effectiveness? And is that like a challenge that AI or technology can help with?
I mean, definitely. That's the whole point of using AI is because it's supposed to make you more effective, right? It's supposed to be like your assistant in a way, just like I said before, where Google was your search, made you more effective for your searching and be able to find what it is that you're looking for instead of looking through a book necessarily. Now AI is able to help you be more efficient in that capacity. So you can find the information you're looking for faster. So you can make your advisory notes even quicker and you can respond to the client in a quicker way. The only thing is, people have to slow down as well because they're gathering more information quickly. But that also means you have to take your time to review that information to make sure it's the right information. It helps you find more and then it helps you look at more faster. But it also has to take your time and slow down to review that information before you actually give that advice to the client or somebody else. It speeds up a lot because you're going to find the information faster, but you still have to take the time or be slow to review it and make sure you're giving the proper advice. But at least it takes that first part and speeds that up. So right away, it's making you more efficient in that capacity and you're saving time for the client and for yourself.
Yeah. And that human judgment, that human role is still there on the back end.
Oh, 100%.
That makes a lot of sense. Yeah. So I talk to a lot of practicing lawyers and some of them are using Copilot, some of them are using Harvey tools like that. But I suspect, and I want to hear your take on this, but I suspect that the real progress being made is maybe another layer down, which is closer to what you do. Can you talk to me about what sorts of AI work you're doing that may not be something that is obvious to the practitioner or lawyer, but that's happening in a way that gives them a result quicker?
Yeah, of course. There's a lot being done with these AI tools now, but there's a lot being done with the previous tools that we've had as well that now have an AI component into it. And what we can do now is talk to the attorney to understand what it is they're looking to do, and then develop either proper AI workflows or just using an AI-enabled tool within the tool we already have that was specialized to do what it is they're looking for in the first place. Right now, a lot of the times what I'll do is I'll meet with people, hear what it is they're thinking of developing, and then take a second to really work with one of the AI tools that you might have mentioned already, just to understand what it is they're looking for. Because I'm not an attorney, so I don't necessarily understand all their needs right away, but I understand what it is they want to accomplish. All right. So first thing I do is I try to understand their need. I try to understand or get as much background information for what kind of task or transaction that they're about to embark on. So I can understand, like, okay, this is how things were done in the past, and this is what it is that they need to know, and this is background information for this type of transaction. Okay, so what kind of tool do I have to facilitate the needs that they have right now? I'll take a look at our toolbox basically and see what can fulfill their need right away. Sometimes we don't need to develop it. Sometimes AI isn't always going to be the answer necessarily. Sometimes you have a tool that was developed for that specific task. So why do I want to reinvent the wheel? Other times I'll have to, right? But what I'll usually do is I'll work with them to figure out not necessarily how to complete the whole project, but a way to speed up their pain points or the thing that took them the most time before that wasn't either necessarily billable work or it was just mundane tasks happening over and over again, which we can now use a tool like AI to automate for them so they don't have to do the same repetitious process again. That's where I feel AI steps in. And those are the little workflow components that I try and implement for people, because that's one of the most efficient ways to use AI is to just remove the mundane tasks that people didn't go to law school for, so they can get back to doing the proper lawyer work that is billable and that the client is actually paying us to accomplish for them. The client's not paying you to sit there to do research. The client's paying you to take that research and then develop the ideas and to come up with the strategy for them. So that's what the attorneys really need to be doing. Someone else can do that research for them, right? And we can use AI to help us do that research. The client isn't paying you to rename files or to organize their data in a certain way. For instance, recently, somebody came to me and we had a Word document. They needed to turn it into something else. I could have manually done it, but instead I used AI to convert it into a proper Excel, telling it what columns and what kind of data I wanted extracted into those columns, so it's easier to read. And then we can import it into a database and do all the things that we wanted to do there. I'm not necessarily using it to build a complex tool sometimes, because those aren't where you're getting the most bang for your buck or the biggest win. Sometimes the biggest win is just taking that mundane work that would have taken us 5 hours so you could do your next step and just whittling it down to a half an hour. Because also when you're trying to develop these large scale tools, the input you need from the attorneys or somebody else and the guidance you need from them to see if your results or your end product is actually useful takes a lot of time from them as well. So if there's a portion of that project that I can do on my own and then bring to them, that helps them out, because that means that they could be working on something else while I'm doing what I'm doing, and then they can pick up and do the rest of their work when they've accomplished what it is. So even just taking something that would have been mundane and simple to do off their plate, but very time consuming, that's a huge win, I feel, for everybody.
So from the lawyer's perspective, let's say I'm a senior partner and reaches out to you. I think I have a problem that might be something that can be solved with technology. I sort of give you the inputs, you do your magic, and then I get the output and I get to go forward my day. Is that sort of the way it's set up?
I want to hear what the pain point is. I want to hear what you're trying to accomplish. I want to hear what your end product should look like. Depending on what that is, I'll either say, yeah, we can get you that end product, or I'll say, actually, we can get it this far for you, but you're going to need to check it afterwards and then massage it to get it to where you want it to be afterwards. Because one of the things I always think about when I look at these AI tools is it's not quite there yet to give you that finished polished diamond yet. It's going to give you a rusty, but it's going to give you something to work that's going to accomplish more than you could have done within the time that the AI tool is going to work. So, I mean, being able to at least get it to a state where, okay, I need to polish it up so I can hand it off to the client is a lot better than starting from nowhere, right? So, I mean, they'll sit down with me, they'll call me up and say they want to accomplish this, and I'll say, okay, great. We can do X, Y, Z for you. We just can't do this last little bit just yet, because I like to set the proper expectations also, because I don't want them thinking, oh, I gave it to somebody else, it's going to come back to me and I'm done. I want them to understand that it's still going to need your input afterwards. It's still going to need maybe your input in the middle of it as well. Because right now, the way I look at these tools and the products that come out of them, is this good enough for you? Or wouldn't it have been better to do it just yourself? Because sometimes that is what happens. I mean, we've all heard horror stories of, hallucinated and they didn't know and they submitted it to court or something. That's because people thought that, oh, if I just feed this into this tool, it's going to give me the finished product and I'm good to go. Look at everyone else who's being foolish and trying to work the whole time on this stuff. So everybody still needs to understand human intervention is necessary and human review is necessary. And you can't trust it when it goes out the door, just like you wouldn't trust your assistant to give you a finished product ever. They're not the expert. You are. And your expertise is needed to review that product before it goes out the door. So that's the first thing I usually set with them. So they have an understanding that I'll get you as far as I can, but you got to carry it the rest of the way. And I'm happy to work with you to get it even further, but your input's going to be needed. So if you don't have the time to give me to get it to that point, I can get it 65% of the way there. And you're going to have to take it the rest of the way there.
When in the life cycle of a matter or project do these requests normally come? Maybe it's a mix, but I could imagine it being something that comes in the middle of a project when there's a need to solve a problem right then and there. Or I can imagine this being something that comes up when the dust settles, there's some lessons learned, and there's planning for how to tackle the same problem next time. Is it a mix of those, or do you see one or the other more often?
No, it's a mix of them, I would say. And that's been my experience on my career on any project or tool. It's always a mix because some people coming to you right away because they're very eager to use tech. And so they think right away like, oh, we have a tech solution for this. And especially when it comes to AI, some people think right away because they've been told this a lot of times, oh, use AI, I can do it for you, which is true to some capacity, but it's also not true to another because again, it's not a one-stop shop for everything. So understanding what is needed to be done to have that conversation, then you can figure out if AI is the right tool for it. But getting back to what you were asking, some people want to start from the beginning because they've been told AI can solve everything for them or they think it can. And I think it's a great place to start the conversation because it doesn't hurt ever to figure out if, oh yeah, we can do this for you right away. Not a problem. Sometimes in the middle because they realize, oh, it's taking a lot longer than I thought it was going to take. Or, they've been pulled onto something else and they need somebody else to step in, or they just want to make it a little bit more efficient because it's a much bigger task than they thought, or they're just not even sure if what they're doing is correct right now. And so they want like another set of eyes, which again, AI is a great assistant in that capacity. Or at the end, because they're like, oh, we just did this. And then sometimes I find out about it and I'm like, oh, we could have done this, something else for you. Or we have a tool. That's the next time. Let's talk about this ahead of time. So I mean, in every different way, the conversation can be started. It matters who the players are that involved. And also if they know about the tools that people have at their fingertips. Some people just don't even know what they have available to them. So they don't come to you right away. There's been many times when I've striked up conversations waiting on the lunch line because I've overheard a conversation happening. Or like, someone has sent out, oh, this transaction has happened. And I'll reach out to them and be like, hey, did you use any tech on this, by the way? Could we have this? And this can assist you maybe in the future. Sometimes it's me following up with them after the fact, or sometimes it's them following up with me because they weren't happy with the way things went. And they're just curious if there's a way to just make it a little bit more efficient.
Is there something that law firms can do to improve the fluency of their lawyers in identifying what is a problem that technology might be well suited to solve and what is a problem maybe not? Is there a way to improve that fluency, or do you think maybe it's wasted effort because you can kind of quickly filter those out on your end? I'd love to hear your thoughts on that and whether alternatively, maybe this is just a matter of kind of waiting until it seeps into the consciousness naturally through those lunchroom conversations.
I think it's never a waste to have the conversation with somebody because you never know what that conversation is going to spark. And I love having conversations after a meeting just happened because I feel like that's when the real understanding or knowledge gets passed along when you're having a more of a casual conversation after the fact. So I don't think it's ever a waste of time to ask about a question like that or to find out if there's a way to do something through tech. It really comes down to education and knowledge and sharing what others have done, what others have available to them, and what other people's ideas are, because I think it sparks additional ideas organically. Because once you hear about something, you become less afraid to maybe ask the next question, especially if there was a positive solution around it. So I think it's one of those things where everybody learns differently. So I can't say there's a one way to do it to make it better, but I think that it's never a waste of time to ask a question, especially if you're trying to make something more efficient for the betterment of yourself or for the client. I think it's worth sparking the question because you have the right intentions. As long as you have the right intentions, I think it's a worthwhile conversation to have.
Yeah. And I think it doesn't take long for effective solutions to spread by word of mouth at any organization, including a law firm. So once you are adding value to a technology, that people realize that word gets around, and then there's probably more knocks at the door.
100%. I mean, especially, I think even more at a law firm, just because they all work very close together, especially groups and certain departments. As soon as one has a success, they do share it right away. Because I've heard of people using tools that I've developed for others without me even meeting them before. So I mean, like tools that I've developed for people or macros I've developed for people get used across different groups that I've never even worked for. That's just through word of mouth, through them telling me, oh, by the way, I have something that can fix that, or we had a great success doing this.
Is there a profile of the kind of lawyer that seems more comfortable coming to you, either by age or practice or other factors?
I think it's through experiences. Those I've worked with come to me more, obviously, and those who worked with them come to me more. For me now, at least, it's the more I put myself out there and try to engage with individuals, and the busier I be getting, or the more I'm doing talks like this one, for instance. It just goes to show that I'm trying to help and assist, and I have an understanding of what it is they're trying to accomplish, and I really want to help them accomplish that. So they come to me. It's because they know I'm looking to help. I don't looking to try and solve a problem. And it's something I love to do. So I like to put myself out there to do that. But the newer attorneys, it's very hard to put a blanket statement on any of these questions because it all comes out to personalities too, right? I mean, when you're in the classroom, not everybody's raising their hand asking a question, right? It's only certain individuals. So not everybody's raising their hand to come talk to you because they're shy about it or they're unsure about it. They don't want to look like, for a better word, stupid, because they're asking a question that they don't think is that smart. There's no doubt questions here. You know what I mean? Not a lot of people understand this stuff yet, and not a lot of people understand how to use this stuff yet. So I think that's why I am very open to have any conversation or hear any thoughts about it, because there's plenty I'm not thinking about, and there's plenty I don't understand, especially when it comes to practicing law. So I want to hear as many ideas as possible so we can figure out how to develop something, or I can think of it for the future. I mean, there have been plenty of times when people have mentioned something, and then months later, I said, oh, by the way, they developed a new tool that can actually help you with this. I remember somebody was talking about a certain thing they wanted to develop completely. And we're talking like a brain program that you'd have to code and develop it. And then when the AI came around, because I remember we met with some people, like, oh, you can't do this, we have to build this. When AI came around, I was like, hey, we might be able to develop this now for you because we have the tools that can fill in that middle layer that nobody else was going to be able to build. And we started working on prototypes for it and I'm not saying it's done or anything like that, but I'm just saying that it's just one of those things that when you hear about it and then you hear about the next thing, you put the two pieces together. And that's the most fun thing for me. So I mean, that's why I like to have the conversation, because eventually we'll be able to solve that problem. To me, there's never a problem that can't be solved.
Yeah. Ultimately, I think there's a cultural sort of transformation that has to happen at organizations around technology, and lawyers are going to have to learn and adapt to the reality that technology is not just Microsoft Word. It's not just Outlook, that there's a new dimension being added. And I think that this will be common sense and commonplace knowledge at some point. I don't know, 2, 3, 4, 5 years. I don't know how long it takes, but we are certainly at the early part of that transformation, I would think, in terms of educating and changing how people think about problem solving and injecting technology into that.
And I agree. Like you said, it's not going to be 2 years, man. It could be 2 to 5 years. It all depends, right? But it's the fact that people are starting to learn about it earlier on now, and people are starting to use it on a daily basis earlier on, I think will make them much more agreeable to using it later on professionally. Like probably people use it more so personally now, either ChatGPT, Gemini, Claude, whatever it is. And then they're not used to using it professionally yet because they're either afraid maybe, will be correct, or they're not sure if they should be using it, or maybe they haven't gotten the direction from a partner or senior associate to use it, so they don't not sure if they should. But eventually it's something to come down to practice, just like Google became, just like Siri and all the other things that people are now using without even thinking.
I completely agree. And earlier when you gave some examples where you help lawyers solve specific problems they had or achieve particular tasks in a more efficient way of technology. I'm curious, are there moments where there's sort of an aha or a realization that this is a problem that comes up often, or maybe comes up in other contexts, other lawyers, other practices, other clients, and there's an effort to maybe adapt that solution in a more global sense and make it more enterprise available as opposed to just being a targeted solution for a specific matter?
100%.
What does that look like?
So when I was at Allegory, I was a product manager there. And you're developing a new product. You don't want to develop the product for one individual because that doesn't sell, right? You want to develop that product for as many people to use as possible. That's kind of the same outlook I have when I'm developing a new tool or a new prompt or a new workflow for others. It's, okay, how can we take this and then leverage it so it can be used by the masses instead of just for this one individual? Because as much as the practices are different, they're very same. They're very similar in some ways, right? Everybody does research. Everybody reviews documents. Everybody has to read things, answer things, fill in a form. Everybody has to answer clients with questions. Everybody needs some sort of database with their, knowledge database. So anything you're developing for one can almost be leveraged and used for another, a couple of tweaks here and there. So anytime I'm developing something, I keep that in the back of my mind, or I try and broadcast it. So it's like, we have this new template that you can use. You might have to adjust the names of things here and there, but the overall output of the overall use, it's going to be the same. So what I usually do, because I work across all my practice routes, is I just kind of make a mental note about it because I never know when it's going to come up necessarily. And the worst thing to do, I've found over my years, is to try and push something when no one actually needs it, because you're never going to get a lot of buy-in for it because, returns are busy. And the last thing they want to do is change their workflow, right? But I mean, when you know something's about to happen or you worked on something very similar in the past, you can raise it then, and there might be a little bit more open to it. Or they might want to see how it would look after this transaction stuff. Because I've had that happen to me a lot of times too, where I've understood their transaction and I've come to them in the middle of it and said, hey, we could have done this for you. And the answer is usually, okay, maybe next time. But I'll follow up them right away and say, okay, great. At the end of this transaction, let's take what you did and let's take this tool that we have here and compare the results and the output and see, if this could have actually assisted you and then how much time this would have saved you guys. And we do that because we want to make sure that we're being as efficient as possible at the end of the day. The client wants us to be as efficient as possible at the end of the day. So do the attorneys, but they have other stuff they have to do as well. Their work isn't going away if this one project takes 10 hours and then what I use my tool takes them 5. Now all that means that they can get to more work more efficiently in one day instead of across a week.
Or focus on higher value work, right?
Yeah, exactly.
I mean, that term productizing solutions, it's one of those terms that I heard used a lot as I started my journey here thinking about legal tech. And I didn't get it at first. And I've only recently really had it click for me because from a layman's perspective, the idea of a product is, to me, something you sell to the outside world. But what I think productizing AI or productizing solutions really needs to be understood to be is a product that is internal to an organization, right? It's not necessarily a product that's being sold to the outside world. It means you take a solution that worked in one context and you make it something that you can use across the organization. And that to me is a rethinking of how technology functions at a law firm, from my experience working private practice, and something that I think all lawyers are going to have to internalize is this notion that technology is not just Excel spreadsheets. It's not just something that you use as a productivity tool. It is something that really needs to be thought of as a potentially enterprise-wide solution to certain problems.
100%. It's when we developed these products, as you're saying, it's because you want to use them over and over again. We're not selling them necessarily for use, but we are in another way because, the client is still paying us to do the work for them. So, in a way, they're buying that product because we're being as efficient as possible. We're giving them the best output as possible, right? So it is productized in that way, but it's not necessarily sold like a regular product would on a shelf, but these ideas are sold to the attorneys too. So when I'm building something for them or this product space, this workflow, whatever it is, I'm selling it to them to use necessarily, right? That's kind of my job. I look at my job sometimes as a salesperson in a way because I have to sell the use of the technology to them sometimes. I don't necessarily hate that because it's always a thrill to sell something. It's always a thrill to get a win. It's for someone to use your ideas. So I love that in a way. And so I love developing this stuff, and then I like seeing others be able to use it because it makes their lives easier. So it's one of the things that brought me into this role, I think, is the problem solving. And that's the thing I really get kicked out of. When I was doing e-discovery work, it was the same thing. Being able to find the information they're looking for in the most efficient way possible. Now I'm assisting them to work in the most efficient way possible.
Yeah, that's a huge tip in there for junior attorneys or junior professionals listening in, which is you have to be selling something to the organization or to your partners. We're not just servicing partners. You should always think of everyone as a client. And I think that helps people focus on kind of how to add value and how to really matter in an organization. So when I started my effort to digitally transform my practice about a year ago, let's say, I took the path that most people take when they start, which is to look to vendors, to look to third-party service providers, to look to what are all the technical experts developing that they can offer to me that will make me more efficient in my practice. But what I find increasingly is that my time spent at or conversation so far is really focused on something else, which is the ability to develop things in-house, the ability to use tools might come from, of course, outside vendors, but that the actual solutions being developed are being developed by us internally. Is that an intentional point to this conversation, or is that by accident? Can you share your thoughts on what is the role of in-house development versus third-party tools, build versus buy?
Well, it is always a place to buy a tool, right? Developing a tool is not necessarily cost effective sometimes, right? But when you have tools that you can develop within, I think that's where you need to focus a lot of your attention because you're already paying for this one tool. You can do a lot of different things. You can develop certain workflows, you can develop certain problem solves within it. Why buy another one, right? We want to be as efficient as cost saving as possible as well. If you have one tool in your house that does something, you're not going to buy another one that does just a little bit of that. You're going to use that tool as many times and as many different ways as possible. So the same thing here. I mean, a lot of these AI tools now have the ability to develop workflows within them. So why wouldn't you leverage that instead of just trying to find another tool or hire another person to do something that you can have this tool do for you? Developing in-house, it can be taken a couple different ways, right? You don't necessarily need to code anymore to develop things, right? Before, when you were developing a product, you had to be able to code. You had to be able to understand how to write it, read it, fix it, and do all those things. Now you don't necessarily need that, right? Using Copilot or one of the other tools I mentioned, like Harvey or Legora, you have the ability to create work or to create products for you within these tools by large language models, just entering a prompt, getting the output from it, and then editing that prompt as much as you need to get the final end product you're looking to do. A lot of times what I'm doing sometimes in Copilot is I use it to help me develop macros within Word or Excel, because to me, those are little products, right? Those are little tools that you're going to use again and again for certain situations. But I'm using one of the tools that we already have to develop that for us. But again, I don't know how to write code. So I can use Copilot to write me a macro for what it is I want, test it out, and then go in and be like, all right, it didn't do this for me. Try again, having it do that, right? And then it spits out another macro for me, and then try it again. And that's the process we'll go through. And that's me developing something in-house for use for a particular client or across everybody, like an enterprise solution type thing.
Interesting. So let's take an example. Let's say I want to be able to quickly pull information out of my deposition transcripts. I need it in a pinch, and I don't have time to go find a product off the shelf that does this for me. I call you up and I say, Ben, what do we have that we could use to sort of develop this capability quickly in-house? How do you do that? What steps do you take? What tools do you use to sort of go and start developing a simple solution like that in-house?
I mean, in that scenario, I would just say, oh, well, we have a solution for that already out of the box. But, we have stuff that would do that for us, right?
Yeah.
A lot of these tools will be able to grab the information you want for you or summarize the information you want, and be able to pull up the key points and characters or the story of what's happening with the tool. So I would say, oh, it's not a problem. We can develop it for you. Just tell me how you want that laid out for you to digest it yourself. Uh, so in that scenario, I would say, oh, we have something off the shelf. Don't worry about it. But I mean, in a scenario where somebody came to me with something that we don't have off the shelf, I would say, all right, again, walk me through what it is they're looking to accomplish at the end. And then walk me through the steps you take now. I want to understand their current workflow so I can figure out where we can implement tech into a portion of that workflow. Because a lot of times people aren't open to changing the whole workflow, right? Because they're used to it. There's other things that maybe they're not mentioning that they have to do in between when they're doing certain steps, or they need others to do certain steps for them before they can get to this. So if I can understand their workflow and say, oh, yeah, well, we can put something in here, do this portion of it for you, and save you this much time. Would that be of assistance? Would that help you? Answer is usually yes, because who doesn't want to be more efficient? Who doesn't want the assistance or use tech if they don't have, they can. So I'll implement tech there, or then I'll implement tech in another place within the workflow. So I'm not looking to completely revamp their workflow, because a lot of times the tech solution won't, like I said before, do the whole thing for that. But we could definitely implement into a certain place to relieve some of the stress and take off some of the pain points that they've been talking about. And the reason that they came to me in the first place to redo the workflow, because there's always something that's bothering them, or something that's too painful to do, or something they just don't want to do. And so we'll figure out is that solution going to be tech? Is that like that we have off the shelf, like you say? Is that solution be an AI prompt that we have to develop ourselves that we can then use in the future, or just for this one specific case? Or is going to be just another person? Sometimes even the solution is, put a paralegal on it actually, because they're going to be efficient enough to do this without you then having to QC the work product afterwards as much, because you can trust that they will focus on what it is you're going to do. So it's always a variety of answers depending on what it is. But the biggest piece to me is understanding the current workflow and what their end result is that they're looking to accomplish. Because then that's where I can figure out what tools we either have in-house to use right away, or we have to develop around them to do the one thing that is that they don't want to do the most.
That's interesting. You have to create discrete chunks of the workflow and see where the opportunity lies. In technology.
Because if you look at technology, like another part of your team, you would do the same thing. You're 5 people on your team. You're going to look at that and see, okay, what part of that project or what part of that workflow do I want that person to work on? Tech is the same way. Tech is going to do what portion of that work for you within that workflow. So I have to understand your workflow in order to implement that tech.
This is the hardest thing about deploying technology in any large organization. The temptation can be, I need a redlining tool. That's what I need. I need something that redlines documents for me. But then when you get into the weeds, you start to realize that different users have different needs. And perhaps one set of users is used to working in live documents and comfortable with that. Maybe a different set of users have no idea how to do that, and they need native files. They have to have local copies lying around. You might find that some set of users has a playbook that makes very clear how they go about negotiating certain provisions of a contract, and that playbook can inform the red line. Others may have no playbook, or there might be other differences as well. So I've seen this play out in practice where if you try to just jump to the conclusion that you need a redlining solution, for example, you're going to set yourself up for some potential failure, because the question you should be asking is not, do I need a redlining tool? It's, what is it that the lawyer is doing that is creating problems or friction points? And then from there, you can back into what a solution might be. Like you said, maybe it's entire all-in-one tool, or maybe it's just fixing some discrete part of that process.
Yeah, and it's understanding also, like you were saying, like how they work actually. Does it mean the tool actually might not assist them if they don't know how to work with this kind of files that are going into it, or the output that's going to come out of that tool either. So you have to set up pilot programs, and then try and grab people from all different walks of profession, because not everyone's going to work in the same way. Not everyone's need is going to be the same, or output is going to be the same. They might need it in different ways. Like some people might need it as a Word, some people might need it in Excel, some people might need it as a PDF, for some reason to submit to court or something. I'm not sure. But what I'm trying to say is everybody works differently, and everyone's going to use tech in a different way, either the most of the capacity or just a little bit of it. So I think you need to pilot it to see, okay, what people use actually within the program. Is it worth buying it? Because if somebody uses a program, but they barely touch any of it, they only use one small piece of it, like you were saying about the redlining thing, maybe they don't want to use those set of documents. They want to work in live documents or something locally. So now you don't want a cloud solution. You need something that people can install and maybe use locally, right? So you need to pilot it out to see how it's being used, how much people actually like to use it. Is the user interface good for somebody? Because even if the work can be done, if they don't like to use the platform, no one's going to use it. If they don't like to set up their documents in a certain way or store their documents in a certain way, they're not going to use it either, right? You have plenty of people who are happy to use the cloud. And then you have plenty of people who still want to save stuff locally, right? So I mean, if you give them a cloud solution where, as long as all your documents live in iManage or in the cloud somewhere, it's great to use. But then the person that needs to use it does everything locally or off of an external drive for security reasons or whatever it's going to be, it won't work for them. So why bring it in-house, right? So, I mean, you got to test this stuff out. You have to find out who your users are going to be instead of like, oh, we're going to buy it for this one group. Because what if you have one user in that group? Are you really going to pay for an enterprise solution if only 2 people are using it? I would say no, right? But then also, maybe that product won't sell you that product because they know you have the potential to have 1,000 seats, but you're only buying one. And then they're skeptical because maybe you're going to share that seat or something, right? So, I mean, there's so many things that come into play, but I think the first thing you have to do is understand what it is they're trying to accomplish and how they work to begin with, and then who's going to be using it and test it out with. But not just them, everybody else around them also, because you want to be able to maximize the use of these tools. And the only way to do that is to use it or have people who don't usually or don't think they're going to use it, test it out themselves as well. But maybe they'll become adopters of it. You just never know.
It's clear to me that you bring a lot of your product management, product development skill set to your role. So I'm curious, if you took a hypothetical global corporate law firm, 1,000 lawyers, and you were building from scratch the roles or functions that are needed to do what we've been talking about today, right? To be able to identify problem sets that can be solved with technology and then deploying solutions to address those problems. What would that look like? What skill sets or what roles or what functions do you think are needed to piece all this together?
I think the first one would be a good listener, right? We need to understand and listen to the problem that's happening.
Yeah.
And then go in there without an idea of how you're going to solve the problem before you even hear it. I think a lot of times people want to push certain ideas. So they come in the knowledge of, all right, I'm going to push this agenda item regardless of what's being said. So the first thing you need to do is listen to what's actually being fed to you and what it is that they're trying to accomplish, right? Because the same thing with listening to their workflow, you have to actually understand what it is they've been doing already. So the first thing would be a good listener. And then the second thing would be something that's just flexible and can think outside the box. Because none of this stuff, especially when you talk about the AI world, is without box. Everything is so free right now and fluid and changing so fast that you have to be able to change with it. Instead of thinking you have the idea already and trying to take someone else's problem and fitting it into that box. There's no way to do that. Coming from the e-discovery background, I think it helps me because in e-discovery, you use the same tool over and over again. And a lot of times, the same type of transactions, but every single time, it's a different solution because it's different clients, it's different data types, it's different deadlines. And depending on all those things, you have to adapt your workflow to them, the tools you use in that instance right away, and your ability to just understand their needs to figure out those solutions. So being a good listener, thinking outside the box, and being adaptable is the biggest thing that I would say. If you have somebody like that embedded in your practice or in your practice group who can understand your needs, they'll be able to assist you big time and help you out because they really want to help you out. It's the people who come in trying to fit you into their solution that they're comfortable with because it's good for them. Those are the ones that you have to watch out for because they're looking to promote and push their own agenda instead of looking to solve the problem that you're coming to them.
You've added another resolution to my New Year's resolutions, which is that I need to keep thinking beyond just AI and almost take a step back and remind myself that there are a lot of tools at our disposal short of AI that we can already be using smartly to make our work more efficient.
Yeah, I mean, and I'm sure you have them, right? Your company, other companies out there, they don't get these tools because they're not useful. And just because AI is around doesn't make them any less useful. right? I would still rely heavily on them to see if there's something out there that works for it. Because to me, especially living in New York City, I use this analogy in my head of those delis that you go to lunch that has a salad bar, a hot bar, the sandwiches, the pizzas, does then entrees for you. Sure. None of them are good, right? You don't go to them for a specific thing. You go to them because you want the choices. You go to them because it's good enough at that point.
Speed.
Yeah, exactly. That's AI to me, because AI will do it all for you. Sometimes it'll do it great. Sometimes that hot plate, that hot dish is going to be fantastic. But sometimes it's going to be old and not going to be that great. It's hallucinating, giving you the wrong thing. It told you this, but now it's that. When you have a tool that's set up for one purpose, it's going to probably do that purpose fantastic every single time, right? If you go to a pizza place and you just want pizza, most likely the pizza's going to be good, all right? You go to a pizza place and there's 10 other things, most likely that pizza's not going to be that great. When the diner menu is that big, none of it's good usually.
I never get sushi from a place that has ramen, and I never get ramen from a place that has sushi.
Exactly. But you always have a friend that does. I have a friend that he would always get the shrimp scampi at a diner at 1:00 in the morning. I'd always tell him, you come here for a grilled cheese sandwich or a burger. You don't come here for shrimp. But he always did it anyway and got sick.
I can see that you work at a law firm that really is thinking about this in a very tech-forward way, in a very advanced way. But as we talk, I can also see my experience. I know how law firms operate from having worked with them for most of my career. Some are going to really struggle to adapt. And I think they're going to struggle to adapt to the idea that this is not just about paying for the product that everyone else is paying for. This is not just about scrolling through a list of what are the hot AI products and just subscribing to them. This is really about taking a product management kind of approach. It's about understanding what your needs are, what your clients' needs are, and putting in a lot of effort to figure out how to solve those problems. And really, you have to leave at the door the sort of keeping up with the Joneses kind of thinking. You have to leave at the door the notion of being left behind just because you're not getting the same thing that everyone else is getting. What are your thoughts on how law firms are positioned today to survive this transformation that's happening?
I mean, from what I've read online and what I've seen, like different conferences I've gone to and heard from others and law firms, I think everyone's moving very fast. I think they're all trying to be heavy adopters as quick as possible because that's just how the world is changing, right? I mean, if you go on LinkedIn, every post is about AI in some capacity or another, and everyone's posting these great numbers about their adoption and how much everyone uses it and stuff like that, which is great. I'm sure it's all true. Like, everybody wants it in-house because they know others are expecting it also, right? But I think the adoption is going to come from just use and the openness to use it and understanding that you might fail when you're using it and then you have to try again. It's like any new tool you're using or even just riding a bike, the more practice you get on it, the more efficient it's going to get, the better you're going to be at using that. But I think law firms in general were always very slow at digital adoption and tech adoption because of the risks that were involved. They never wanted to be the first ones to say they're using it. But the funny thing is, they've been using AI for a longer time than people know. I mean, in my world, at least in e-discovery, technologists has been reviewed a long time ago. And until a judge said, yeah, I accept this isn't the right way to do this, nobody really wanted to use it or they were afraid to use it. But now it's more common practice because, oh, we got the approval and others are using it. That's great. You know, I mean, no one wants to be the one just out there sticking their neck out the first time. But I think everybody's sticking their neck out right now. Every single firm is out there choosing an AI product, championing an AI product. So now everyone actually has the ability to say, yeah, I'm using this and I'm going to go forward with this and push this. But now comes the adoption part of people actually using it in-house, right? And that's going to come to play where the attorneys are comfortable using it themselves, right? We can get as many tools as we want. Doesn't necessarily mean people are going to use them. So, I mean, how do you get people to use them is a bigger question, I think, and the more important question. That comes from not necessarily training, but I think it comes from messaging to the attorneys. Because you can't really, to me at least, you can't really train how to use AI, right? Because every scenario is going to be different. That's like me saying, I'm going to train you how to do a Google search. You can't really train someone how to do a Google search. They just have to do it and then try again and then try again and then try again until they get the results that they're looking to get. So how do you train that besides just telling them to stick with it, right? So the messaging really has to be, give it a try, stick with it. You're not going to get in trouble for using it and failing, right? You're not going to get in trouble if you spent a half an hour of the hour I told you, hey, I need you to accomplish this. And then you spent some of that time trying to use the AI to it. As long as the messaging from the higher ups are, don't be afraid. We want you to use this. We want you to be as efficient as possible. Try and use it. Share how you used it. I think that will get more and more people to use it, because I think the first step is just getting them comfortable and taking that fear out of them that they're using something that hasn't necessarily been approved in a certain way for every single task. And then also, so they don't have to go to the partner and say, hey, by the way, can I use this? Because let's just be honest, first year is a little nervous to ask that kind of a question, right? Because they don't want to look as if they're trying not to do something, or maybe the partner doesn't like to use AI. People can be efficient if they're using AI. Just because they're using AI or a tech tool doesn't mean they're trying to skirt the actual work they're doing. They're trying to do it in an efficient way. So if that messaging is sent to them and everyone actually understands that to be real messaging, people will use it more and more. So my message to everyone is don't be afraid to fail. You got to try it.
I completely agree that we're not going to brute force people into using these tools, and we're not going to train and educate them into it either. We're going to need to meet them where they are and find their existing workflow and make that more efficient, instead of trying to get them to leave that workflow and do something else. And I think if we do that, and if the results are there, people will be happy, and then they'll ask for more.
Yeah.
So I think the results will speak for themselves. And I think that's when you'll have a lot of momentum in terms of adoption. And I do think that law firms need to embrace this sort of fail and iterate thinking that a lot of other sectors and businesses already have embraced. Of course, they're going to map that against the unique risks that law firms face. But, you just have to be smart about it. You have to make sure that when you're deploying a tool, the failure is not going to lead to a massive risk. The failure is going to lead to a learning that you can take and improve on. So there's definitely the need to be very smart about how you deploy these tools, because of the huge risk that law firms can take on, whether it's transactions, whether it's litigation, or whether it's investigations. But I do think it needs to be a more risk tolerant environment if law firms want to really take the most advantage of what's out there.
Yeah, I guess one of the things I failed to mention about that also was the proper guardrails that place used, right? Because I think that is what will also open up people to know that, okay, when I use this, I don't have to be afraid, but I'm not afraid of something happening that I'm not thinking about, or something like a client data will get leaked or something like that. I guess I didn't mention that because off the top of my head, we're not going to bring a tool in that doesn't have these guardrails in place. We're not going to set something up to potentially fail or potentially put our clients in any kind of risk whatsoever. I mean, they come to us because they're risk averse and they want something done in the proper way, either with our answers or the way we treat their data. So the first thing that has to happen is risk goes through your tool and then puts the proper guardrails in place. So that way people can be open to do the work they want to do without the fear that something bad could happen because of them.
That makes a lot of sense. I think that the lawyers you work with are lucky to have you, Ben. I benefit tremendously from getting your perspective. We kept in contact over the last, half a year or so on some of these topics, and I've learned a lot. So thank you. Thanks for bringing your perspective and your experience and knowledge to the audience here at Version Up. Really appreciate you coming on.
I really appreciate you giving me the opportunity to come on. It's been a great time, and I've appreciated your podcast. Let's start listening to it.
Yeah. Let's see what's in store for 2026.